Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Today is Monday, November 9th. For week 9, it's a lot of carnage here, Chris, and just in terms of not injuries necessarily, but just bad performance. Running back carnage left and right. James Conner was a dud. Some of the guys, getting the San Francisco decision was gotten wrong by a lot of people. All around, there were just disappointing appearances like James Conner. You're thinking against Dallas, but Dallas wasn't that bad defensively. And I was looking at their yards per play. The last few weeks, it hasn't been that bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of teams took the foot off the gas too. Last couple, who just killed them? Oh, Washington killed them a couple weeks ago, and I'm sure in the last couple quarters they took their foot off the gas. But Dallas's defense has an okay pass rush. The linebackers, a couple of them are healthier now. So they're bad, but it's really the offense that fell apart. And then yesterday, the offense wasn't great, but given the competition, it was, serviceable. So
yeah.
I don't know. They didn't it wasn't like the Steelers were on the field the whole time like people thought. But, the thing about every running back being bad except two of them, McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook, who's just been ridiculous, is now McCaffrey's hurt, but Cook is so valuable now in that context because he's just winning the league for you. And then two, it doesn't hurt as much as long as you're not going against Cook. Who cares that your running backs didn't do well? No one's running backs did well. I had Jerick McKinnon and DeAndre Swift. That was fine. That's not a good running back combination. But this week it was fine.
Right. And we had some significant backs off. We had Mixon off. We had the Eagles off. And that matters. You don't have your top guys there. It does matter a little bit. But still, it was just... It was weird that J.D. McKissick was RB3 this week in PPR leagues.
Yeah, it's pretty strange. Aaron Jones didn't do much in a blowout, and Kamara didn't do much in a blowout,
right.
And Derrick Henry didn't do much. Like all the key guys, and then Chubb, Mixon, and Sanders were all hurt heading into the bye. So who knows if they would have played? They're not been a bye, but
right.
That's three guys that
Zeke was compromised, and obviously.
How about Chase Edmonds didn't do well. He had a great matchup. He could have been a good start this week. There are a lot of guys like that, but I have no sympathy for all of you who didn't get good running back production. I didn't get great running back production. I don't have Dalvin Cook. I should have had Dalvin Cook instead of Michael Thomas in one league. I've already regretted that many times. So if you didn't get good running back production, I'm not sympathetic to you.
If you're drafting today, you take Cook or Kamara first?
Cook. I moved him first.
Okay. What is your rank? What do your rankings say now? Cook, Kamara, Henry?
I think so. I think it's Cook, Kamara, Henry overall too, and then then there's receivers: Devontae Adams, Metcalf, Tyreek, maybe.
Yeah.
So I got to look at them. I just changed them today, but I don't remember the overall. But yeah, I think Henry's 3, and then there's a bunch of receivers in there, and then Aaron Jones is still pretty high. And McCaffrey was all the way up the top, actually, before the injury. I was like, he's at top. He had a monster game, and he was back. And now I moved him down to 45th because who knows?
Right. This time it's day to day and not week to week with his shoulder injury. But who knows? I mean, I guess they purposely didn't make him available for the press conference today. And that's the thing. It's not even a press conference. It's like a call. And he's either on the call or he's not. And you can't really corner a guy. You can't even say, "Hey, what's going on?" That's just not possible.
I mean, if you look at how little scrutiny politicians get for they just don't even investigate things. The fact that these running backs or some player about his injury, I mean, it's just such small potatoes. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's right. And it's true. It's really true. So yeah, I mean, McCaffrey, I don't know. He looked really good against the Chiefs. He looked like himself. Mike Davis had 2 carries and I think 4 or 5 catches. But it was pretty clear. It wasn't just we're going to make sure he doesn't play every other play. They used him pretty heavily. Maybe that's to their detriment, but although...
Yeah, they shouldn't have done that. I mean, there's no reason. I guess they were we're playing the Chiefs, but you don't need to give him the dirty work in between the tackles. Just make him into Kamara. Kamara is so valuable to the Saints.
Right.
And yet they don't make him do too much dirty work, and I don't know why They don't do the same with McCaffrey. So here's the interesting thing. Got Cook, then Kamara, then Henry. 1, 2, 3 overall. Then it goes Adams, Metcalf, Hill, Hopkins, then Aaron Jones. Okay, so there's a fourth running back in the top 10, Aaron Jones. That's Keenan Allen, Julio Jones, Travis Kelce. I mean, these are, you could flip-flop something. I'm not going to go to war over these.
Mm-hmm.
A.J. Brown, Tyler Lockett. But these, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Pat Mahomes. 3 quarterbacks in there. Okay. And then Josh Jacobs is number 18, Connor's 19. And I'm like, who else would you put there? I mean, why are those guys number 5 and 6 among running backs? Like, other guys are like Miles Sanders, Nick Chubb, Joe Mixon, but we don't know. And then Edwards-Helaire is, in the top 15. Chase Edmonds is up there. Zeke is up there. Kareem Hunt is up there, even though he's on the same team. I mean, it is just a mess. Probably have Gurley too low, I'm realizing. Gurley's just a machine. He's not good, but he just gets touchdowns and carries all the time. But anyway, point is that
he's a rich man's David Montgomery.
A very rich man's David Montgomery.
Yeah. David Johnson would have been in there, but he got concussed on the second play of the game.
Yeah, but David Johnson, I mean, it's almost like Byron Buxton in a way. And I love Byron Buxton, who balled at the end of last year. I love Byron Buxton. But point is, this is before the year. It was oh, David Johnson. No, this is the time. Bill O'Brien's incentivized to get him. He made that trade and all the stuff. But it's this dude has not been good since 2016.
Right.
It's sort of oh, well, it's just bad luck that he got the concussion right before this easy matchup. And first of all, Duke Johnson did not do that well. And I don't know that that he's better than Duke Johnson, but
against Jacksonville, no less, too. By the way,
his matchup, right? And it's well, oh, it's just bad luck. But it's David Johnson seems to have the bad luck, whatever that means. People are oh, well, it's just bad luck. Well, if you have bad luck all the time, every year, at what point is it bad luck, and at what point is it you just, for some reason, don't get the chance and take the chance? I mean, everybody has bad luck in their life, but it's it's been since 2016. We've been drafting this guy first round, third or fourth round. When is it going to pay off? It's just insane.
It's he walks under a ladder every day, has a family of black cats to make sure one of them crosses his path, has he creates extra cracks in his sidewalk to make sure he steps on one, things like that, something.
It must be. That's the most plausible explanation other than, because we talked about this with Buxton, and I love the guy, and I always draft him anyway, and he actually had a good year this year when he was healthy, but of course he got everything. But the thing is that at what point is there such a thing as a psychological disposition to get hurt or have the wrong thing come up at the wrong time? Is there such thing as, do we not create our reality to some extent? This is some metaphysical stuff, but and that we all have setbacks, but that you just chronically, you need to have setbacks. It's some avoidance technique. There's something called proprioception, which is when you're, I think it's awareness of your body in space. Maybe I'm getting the word wrong, but you're falling down or your ankle starts to twist and you feel it and you straighten it out before it catches and you really hurt it before you put real weight on it. Or you are falling down and you're going to the ground and you start to be aware that your shoulder is going to hit and you sort of brace yourself quickly before it happens. There's different levels of just, some guys just go down and crunch all the weight on the joint and it's shattered. And some guy seems to wriggle out of it and has the body control. You see it on catches. You see it all the time.
Right.
And I wonder whether some of that is sort of you're in this zombie-like mode for a second when you're in the middle of catching a ball and you're not paying attention. Or some of these guys are so tuned in, they feel every ounce of everything going on around them, and they do it. Now, again, people say, well, come on, you don't know this, and it's speculation. It is. But you wonder whether, the guys who really are determined to be the greatest of all time and to meet, the bell every single time, don't have some extra skill involved in, and some of it may be a psychological disposition, some of it may be just physical, but there's some skill involved in avoiding these things. Now, a concussion is a little bit, it's not really, you get clocked in the head, but just that with David Johnson, it's one thing after another, and you don't have to know the mechanism by which these things are happening. You don't have to know, is it really a psychological thing or a physical thing or whatever, but you just think after a while, dude, every single year something happens to this guy. Maybe it's just a series, as you said, of black cats and cracks in the sidewalk and breaking mirrors, but it's just like avoid. Maybe, maybe 2021. I'm sure it'll be his lucky year.
Yeah, I think that will be disabused of that notion next year in drafts. We'll see. But you're right. You mentioned Josh Jacobs is like running back 5, and I watched a lot, pretty much every snap of that Raiders-Chargers game, and Jacobs just looked okay. He loses entire series to Devontae Booker now, and Booker looks pretty good, like he shot out of a cannon. It's that classic second string running back theory that he's ready for that change of pace, and he's the guy that looks better. But you put him in the starting role, and he probably wouldn't look that great.
Yeah, it's just it's a wasteland after 5, and so you're like, okay, well, come on, Josh Jacobs is getting spelled, right? Doesn't catch passes. Would you take CEH over Jacobs? Maybe.
No, but CEH is getting 5 carries a game.
That's what I mean. Jacobs gets 20 carries a game. I mean, and he gets a couple of catches. He gets some time. I mean, I just feel like James Conner, Josh Jacobs, that's your running back 5 and 6. And it's terrible. Now, when Miles Sanders, if he comes back healthy, and Mixon and Chubb come back, that may be, they may supplant those guys. But you got to go with the Pianowski, especially with running backs. You got to go with the Pianowski doctrine, which is, let's just see them come back first before we start putting them in the top 7.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Jacobs the week before had 32 carries, so that might have been a conscious decision by the Raiders to limit him. Jacobs had an illness in practice missed a practice last week due to illness. He said his knee was sore. He's been on he's had some limited practices throughout the season, so that might be something to deal with that too. But still, that affects his performance. It's still there. You can't. It's an explainer, not a reason to wish it away.
Right. James Robinson, I think, is number 9 in my list right now.
He could be higher. He could easily be higher. I could see it. He gets the work. That's one thing. Work.
I know. And Todd Gurley's up like 10. I mean, Todd Gurley is a workhorse, man.
Yeah. So. Yeah, I get it. So I can see that. Atlanta-Denver, that was an interesting game in a couple ways. Atlanta was killing them early. They could do no wrong offensively. They were just dialing it up. Matt Ryan's hitting all these random receivers that aren't Julio Jones, aren't Russell Gage. Gage isn't usable really anymore. Yeah. Even when he's the number 2 receiver, he's not really the number 2 receiver. He's just born to be a number 3.
Yeah.
So no Ridley, didn't matter. But they took their foot off the gas a little bit, and it almost bit them in the butt. Denver had a nice comeback at the end, but it was sloppy. Like Drew Lock was pretty bad early on in this game, and Denver was pretty bad. First drive, they've got this kicker who they spent a good amount of money on, who's been good all year, and they didn't try along like a 56, 57-yarder. They burned a timeout too. They let the clock run down. They didn't get their offsides. They burned their timeout, and then they still punted. It was like the worst of all scenarios.
Yeah, I didn't really watch a lot of the game. I just had Atlanta as my best bet, and they were up 34-13 with 9 minutes left. I thought, okay, this is good, and I still had to sweat it.
Yeah,
so Denver still had the ball, down 7 with like 50 seconds left and no timeouts on their own end, and of course the drive didn't amount to much, but I still had to sweat it. I was like, are you kidding me? I got to sweat this? This is ridiculous.
Drew Lock has become the garbage time master.
Yeah, he's this year's Gardner Minshew. He just cleans up at the end of games. I don't think he's very good. I don't think he's gonna. I think he's like Minshew-esque at best,
with a much higher draft cost. But at least they're playing him, letting it play out. Jerry Jeudy looks the part. He looks really good. His route running is so good. I just kept feeding him, and I was like, okay, this is good. They're getting him more. I mean, the Cortland Sutton injury sucks for them, but at least it got Jeudy more work right away, and that's something they needed to do.
It's interesting though. This class was supposed to be so good for receivers, and you got CeeDee Lamb and Jerry Jeudy, but like those guys are in. They definitely seem like they're in the DeAndre Hopkins, Michael Thomas, Keenan Allen, Devontae Adams archetype of route running. Guys with like average size who run routes and have good hands, and that's been sort of the thing. Like those are obviously some of the better receivers in football. But they're not like the DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Terry McLaurin, the guys who take the top off, who own the defense, who they've got to dedicate extra guys to because they're not moving the chains. They're basically they're taking the top off. They're burning you for a touchdown on one play. And it's interesting that this was supposed to be the better class, but you got to, Henry Ruggs was supposed to be that guy and hasn't really gotten going that much. Occasionally he's made a play, but nothing consistent.
Right.
And then you got the route running guys who were like, yeah, they're good, but it's like they don't really change the whole game. They're just there making plays, making, first downs. And then it hasn't really been, Claypool is one of those game-changing total beasts. And he had that one game, but they've contained him, and Steelers offense is a little shaky. But it's the 2019 receivers that really, there's obviously way more than I just named. But it's like those freaks from 2019. And for a while, like, it was freaks that were the receivers, the Andre and Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Larry Fitzgerald was kind of a freak at the time. I guess he's sort of in the other tree, the Hopkins tree more. He was never that. He was not fast, and he's not gigantic. He's big, but not gigantic. Anyway, we transitioned into like a technician's world of receivers. And I wonder with Metcalf and A.J. Brown and McLaurin, who runs a 4-3-1 or whatever, that we're not going back. We're not going back to some of the freaks being the kings of the league. And there's this year, again, Lamb and Judy look good, but I don't see them as freaks. I see them as technicians.
I think CeeDee Lamb could be one of the freaks, but I look at his size and it looks like he's got some of that, but he's not. He doesn't have the combo that Ruggs has, but he's
6'2", 200. 6'2", 200.
He looks bigger. I guess it's just a perception issue for me then. But
it's
funny.
Like a 4,
the thing with Lamb is we won't know for a while just because of the decimation of the Cowboys due to injuries. I mean, taking away Dak and that offensive line. I mean, it's hard to tell. He made some plays though, at least against the Steelers and throughout the season. But you're right. It's like Gallup gets the deep balls and Lamb doesn't get those.
Yeah, well, Lamb ran a 4.5. He's 6'2", 200, ran a 4.5. Like, he is not by any means a freak. He's a technician. He's really good. Like, right away as a rookie, he was kind of their number one guy, even with Dak, right? Like, he was getting most of the targets some games, more than Cooper. So obviously Dak really trusted him, and the guy's good.
Right.
But it's like he's a technician. So I don't know. I mean, what would happen if he were with Russell Wilson? I think he'd catch a lot of passes. He'd be really productive. But there's only one DK Metcalf. There's only one A.J. Brown. So it's just interesting. We'll see how it plays out. The technicians seem to be the guys now.
Yeah.
That seems to be the...
Where would you slot Terry McLaurin in that grouping?
Well, he's small, but he's freak speed. And he's also very technically sound. Like, he runs routes, gets open, has great hands. So I would say that he's like, in the third group, which is like the Beckham Antonio Brown group. So there were three groups to me. There was the total size speed monsters, which were, Calvin Johnson, Julio Jones, Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, those guys. And then there were and I guess there's some guys with more size than speed too, like the Mike Evans, Mike Williams guys, but the size speed monsters. And then the technicians who have like good, Keenan Allen 6'2", 210, all those guys, but they're 4.55. They're not fast. They're just really polished players. And then there's like the Beckham, Antonio Brown, and I would put McLaurin with them, who are crazy fast and polished, but they're just smaller. And so that was another sort of archetype of wide receiver. Then also, obviously, like Antonio Brown was the best receiver of the teens, probably. Well, yeah. Julio Jones, then Antonio Brown.
We'll talk more about Antonio Brown in a second, but smart sports bettors always know where to find the best odds before placing a bet, and that's why smart bettors use Proswap. You can always find the best odds on Proswap because you're buying directly from other bettors like yourself. See a ticket you like, but think the price is too high? Submit a bid for a price you think is fair, then buy it. Proswap sellers are always willing to negotiate, and we all know bookies never will. And for a limited time, our listeners can get up to $500 in bonus cash. Just use the promo code ROTO500. That's promo code ROTO500, and Proswap will match your first deposit for up to $500. Become a smarter sports bettor today. Go to proswap.com or download the Proswap app. All right, Chris. So,
hey, one thing I sold McLaurin's size short a little bit. He's 6 feet 210.
Okay.
He's a bit bigger than those Beckham. Brown is smaller, but so he's kind of in between. I mean, he's not like he's a little above average, but he's fast at that size.
Yeah.
So that's at 210. That's good. I actually like a lot of receiving production was correlated with weight. The height wasn't as important. A.J. Brown is 6 feet 230 or whatever, so he's a little bit like that too. He's a little bit more freakish than I was giving him credit for.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to be able to handle getting hit at the line of scrimmage. You got to be able to handle getting hit in traffic. Fighting for that ball with a DB. That was one of the knocks on Hollywood Brown, and there was a big talk about how he added weight and all that. Well, even after adding weight, he was still less than those guys.
Yeah, he's 183. I mean, Antonio Brown is 5'10", 185.
Yeah.
And he was, an all-world Hall of Fame level receiver. So you can do it if you're just like a monster like that. But Hollywood Brown was playing in the 160s last year. You realize that in the NFL? It's like they're playing with a 12-year-old. I mean, they just push him around. He's obviously ridiculously fast. But 183, you thought, okay, with that speed, 183, maybe he's Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill's 185. But maybe not. Maybe his frame is still a little smaller than those guys, and or maybe he's just still learning how to get by with it. But yeah, it's hard to be that small. Most of these guys, most of the really small guys. Who was the guy in the Cardinals, the deep threat? He was like a one-dimensional deep threat. He played for the Bears too. I'm spacing. It was Taylor Gabriel, and the Bears was one. But there was a guy that was crazy fast on the Cardinals. He was just a one-dimensional deep guy. Someone will let us know on Twitter or whatever. But the guy was like 165, and people would draft him like, "Oh, I'm going to draft this guy." Like, why?
The Raiders had guys like that coming out of their ears for years.
Yeah, but you can't draft a guy who's 165. You just can't do it. It's not going to. He can't possibly get targets. He can't possibly hold up. He's got one thing he can do, and that's it.
Yeah, so I kind of liked getting Hollywood Brown a lot this year, and I've been wrong on that one. But the Brown I want to talk about, though, is Antonio Brown and the Bucs. They looked awful last night. Brady looked awful. They forced the ball to Brown a lot. Brown did not look up to speed. It didn't look like he had the offense. At least one of the interceptions for Brady was actually Brown's fault. It was stop and go at the end of the first half, and he stopped his route. And it looked like an arm punt instead during the 2-minute drill, which always is fun.
Yeah, it's funny though, because and probably if Antonio Brown's brand new and Brady obviously is Tom Brady, we always assume when the receiver stops his route and they show the replay, oh, he screwed up, like he's supposed to keep going. What if Brady was like, what if the route was sort of like, check out the coverage and read it, and if you stop, I'll hit you on a back shoulder, and if he bites, I'll go. We don't really know. Like that was him. Could have been. I just think it's funny how they're always like just concluding, oh, he stopped his route. He must have stopped his route for a reason. Like he must have seen something and thought maybe to adjust it. In any event, I was sort of thinking, like, because that game was so bad and Brown ostensibly didn't have a good game, as you said, that he could be like a scapegoat. Like they could be like, this team was 6-2. We're just killing teams. And then you bring in this troublemaker, and now like this team's undisciplined. Just watch out for that. Like if another game, if it goes bad, people start griping.
Oh yeah.
And then who knows?
That was on my timeline for sure. I had people saying he messed with the team's chemistry, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And it's just correlation, whether it's causation or not. At a certain point, people would be like, it was going fine until they brought him in.
Right. Brown had 5 targets. Mike Evans actually had 6. So there was some, it just felt like Brown might have been getting more, but it was interesting. Bruce Arians actually threw Brady under the bus today in his press conference, said that he missed Evans a couple of times. I think the exact quote was Evans was open and he just wasn't targeted, which, that using the passive voice, that's nice without just actually saying Tom missed him. But Tom deserves that. I mean, he's also the type of guy that will get on, his teammates if they're messing up. So, I think that he deserves to have a little bit on him too when he has a bad game, and he definitively had a big game. That last interception, I don't know if the ball slipped in the rain or something, but it was a pop up. It was a lob. Rafael Nadal was like, "Okay, I'm waiting to smash this."
Yeah. I mean, Brady. It's funny because if you're the thing about Brady, and even like when Eli was on his way out, and Eli's obviously not Brady, but he won 2 Super Bowls, was a big star in New York. And I'm thinking, like, don't you see how much you suck? How is it that you're not like, yeah, of course I suck. Like, this is ridiculous that I still have this job. Those guys get their ass kissed so much by everybody around them. I mean, you can just imagine, like, if you're Tom Brady, like,
The whole
And so
TB12 thing. I mean, he's got his personal trainer, his medical clinic, and all that. Maybe it's right, but everyone is also kind of polishing him up and saying, "Oh, you're right about this. We'll do this for you." Yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's definitely has some track record, and he's 43 and healthy in the NFL, which is pretty good. But they kiss his ass, and so and quite a bit about playing quarterback. Obviously, he obviously knows as much as anyone ever. And so, if Arians says something, what has Arians done? I mean,
right.
He's just some douchebag coach, and you're sort of like, screw that guy, But Belichick, was, he had his gruff way of doing stuff. Brady would go in for the hug after the Super Bowl, and I don't know if Belichick was reciprocating that, but it's just it's not like criticizing a normal person who might be a little prickly, but be like, all right, well, he thinks I could do a better job. Maybe he's right. You're criticizing somebody who's the boss of everything. It's just very interesting. So we'll see if there's any fallout from that. I like that Brady brought in Antonio Brown, that he wanted to get Antonio Brown, but there are just too many mouths to feed. I mean, they've got Gronkowski, Antonio Brown. They've got one of the best receivers. They have two Hall of Famers right there. I mean, Brown won't make it because of his off-field stuff, but he would have. Brown and Gronk. And then Evans and Godwin are two Pro Bowlers at their peak. They've been hurt so much this year, but you got two peak Pro Bowlers and two Hall of Famers who are only 31. They're not 36. And they're all in the same offense. This is insane.
It's like Godwin is this afterthought all of a sudden.
And he's probably their best receiver right now.
He could be. I think it might be Evans, but I'm not sure. It could be, yeah. By the way, Gronk got away at the play, and he's done this all his career. You get the PI in the end zone. He just runs right in the linebacker and turns around. It's like, well, he had an arm on him. Well, yeah, the guy just ran into him. I mean, it never gets called. Never, ever gets called against Gronk. It's such a perfect play.
Yeah.
You either get the touchdown or you get the PI.
Yeah, it's like perfecting a flop in basketball or soccer, but they're onto that stuff. I don't know. It just seems like the collisions between players on either with the balls in the air or just if it's a tackle being made or whatever, it's just so arbitrary which way they rule it.
Yeah.
It's just the impression that the ref gets.
Right.
Man,
and it happens at such a fast speed that they got a trained eye at least, but I get it. We get to see it slow-mo and we get to see it pointed out, and you hear the commentator saying, I don't know what he's supposed to do. Okay, well, yeah, it's easy for us to see that. Easy for me to make that comment after I've seen it and, the reverse angle and all that, but it's probably
the truth is most people don't, I don't know what the refs are doing, but they don't pay attention to their moment that much. People aren't always so in the moment. They're sort of looking and thinking, toggling between their thoughts and their vision. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that because they're thinking, they're not there. I mean, they're there, and they're looking, but they're in their heads. They don't see the thing. They just sort of experience this thing that's half in their head and half on the field, and they just go with the impression they got from it. And you'll be they'll call a penalty that you'll see on replay. You'll be what the hell is this guy thinking? But what he's thinking is just that he was thinking about something half. So he didn't totally see it, and so he just saw this collision, and one of the guys fell, or they were running out, and he's looking at a bunch of different things at once because, there's a lot to look at. And the guy's legs got tangled up. He sees one of them falling, throws the flag. And his impression is this. It's just his impression.
Right.
He didn't see it. It's just his vibe from it. And these guys are not, they're not enlightened Buddhists or something. They're sitting there completely present, which they should be, at least for their jobs. But even players, football players, quarterbacks, Daniel Jones is not present when he's getting strip sacked and he doesn't realize it. I mean, everybody, all of us are prone to distraction.
Sure.
And then they're just calling it based on kind of what they feel about it, what they sort of, with the impression they got. And so then you see the replay, you're like, dude, what the hell? And then you see, oh, I get it, because one guy fell back, but he was the one who initiated the hit to the helmet, and you're calling on the other guy.
Right.
But that was just his impression. So it's unless you want to, the problem is replay is such a scourge. We've talked about this, how you don't want to reverse it and legislate everything. So I'm just going to live with it.
Right. Well, and that's why, you see the helmet-to-helmet calls, the emphasis against horse collar tackles. I saw in the college game the other day, on Saturday, a guy gets tackled right here, under the armpit, the sleeve, and pulls the guy as he's tackling him down. The guy twists, and it makes it look like it's a horse collar. And so, of course, they call it. It's like, no, what did you saw the twist. You didn't see the actual horse collar. And so, protect the player. Oh, yes, we got to do that. I get it. I get why we have these, we're protecting players. We saw the emphasis on concussions and helmet to helmets. You want to try to get that out of the game, but in the zealotry to do so, they're inserting themselves in the game where it doesn't need to be done. And I guess that's the price we have to pay for it if we want that. But you have to ask, is it worth it?
Right. It's like, yeah, no, it's a huge second order effect thing. First of all, is it definitely a thing that there are fewer serious injuries now than there were 20 years ago?
No idea.
I don't know that's the case. Like, are there fewer concussions? Well, we didn't record the concussions as faithfully back then, but it certainly seems like there's still quite a few concussions.
I bet you someone knows that. I just haven't tracked that down myself.
Well, I just don't think they, I mean, a lot of people are just playing through concussion. Junior Seau was just playing through it. So
right.
It's kind of like, we know what happened later, but we don't know exactly how many he got. Whereas now we'd probably know at least a little bit more one by one. But, or how about those lower leg hits? Like, look at Dak, look at Kyle Allen, look at Alex Smith a couple of years ago. I mean,
yeah.
Are we, good thing they've put those rules in. There's nobody having their ankle twist around the wrong way. Like, no, it's happening regardless.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Like, at some point it's just like, dude, these guys are going to get hurt, and just don't interfere with the game, because you're damaging it's like they're getting hurt for naught. If the game is just a referee fest, then what are they even doing? Why are they even risking all the injuries? At least, like, if they get hurt and it's a great sport because the refs aren't overly ref showing it, then then at least they got hurt for a reason, for the glory of this amazing game. But
yeah, well, I think also as the game gets bigger, stronger, faster, through biology and chemistry both, the speed of those collisions are increasing, and of course you're going to have more damage as part of that. I think that's just one of the things that we have.
Skulls haven't gotten thicker. Skulls haven't gotten thicker at the same proportion that muscles have gotten bigger, and people have gotten faster.
Ankle ligaments can only take so much. I mean, and you're putting a lot of stress on it anyhow for being this fast and this big and this strong, and then you add somebody else's to it there. I mean, I saw a play in the Florida-Georgia game where on a touchdown play, this tight end makes a great play, got his leg twisted under him, and it's just like a ruptured ankle, and you're just like, ugh. And, I sometimes think that the speed of the game contributes to that sometimes. And, of course, CBS showed the replay like 7 times of the injury. Like, God, enough already. This is getting Tim Krumrie-esque.
Yeah. It's injury porn is what
it really is sometimes. But it's terrible. Before we move on, we've got one more note to share. Football is back, and new customers at BetMGM Sports can kick Week 10 off with a 100% deposit match up to $500. Simply sign up and make a deposit with the bonus code RotoWire to take advantage of this offer. There's never been a better time to get in on the action at BetMGM with parlay bonus payouts, live betting, daily boosted odds specials, and much more. Don't let 1 minute of the NFL season pass you by. Download the BetMGM app today or go to BetMGM.com and use bonus code RotoWire to double your betting bankroll with a 100 deposit match up to $500. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado, Indiana, New Jersey, Nevada, or West Virginia. Please gamble responsibly. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-522-4700 in Colorado and Nevada, 1-800-GAMBLER in New Jersey and West Virginia, or 1-800-9-WITH-IT in Indiana. Promotional offer not available in Nevada. Chris and Jeff here. We are talking about Week 9 and all that happened there, and a couple other things, Chris. The Bills-Seahawks game. Fun game. A lot of scoring. The Bills just could do no wrong in the first half. They were just dialing up whatever pass play they wanted to do. They didn't even bother running, and why should they? The Seahawks they were terrible. Terrible in coverage, terrible in tackling, too.
Yeah, did you see Greg Ambrose's tweet where it was a Gil Brandt tweet that he retweeted, where the Seahawks are averaging 360 yards passing allowed per game? How 360?
And it's historic, yeah. I mean, yeah, there's nobody
it's not
that
even
does
close.
it.
Yeah, the next highest is like 320 or 310. I mean, it's so out there. And, Cam Newton went for 390 against them.
Right.
So it's like everybody's going crazy against them. And Josh Allen went for 414. And Pete
And it could
Carroll,
have
I
been
think, was
more.
like,
If they needed it,
yeah.
he could have dialed up more. They were trying to slow the game down in the second half.
So, and Pete Carroll was like, we had all these, all this preparedness for their run game, and they just didn't run. They just threw. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's because you didn't guard the pass. They would have loved to play into your run defense if you stopped the pass. You could have used that, but you can't just not stop something and then be mad that, oh, but we're so prepared for their running game. Well, yeah, but it doesn't work like that.
It's like the French having the Maginot Line and couldn't expect the Germans to go around. Wait, are we making World War II references? Okay, topical.
It's too soon, Joe.
Too soon. And it's such a good team that has such a glaring flaw. The other problem yesterday was Russell Wilson was getting beat up, really beat up. He got hit 16 times in this one, and yeah, he had 4 turnovers, 2 on fumbles, 2 on interceptions. And it was just he was scrambling a lot, not like a design scramble, just a like running for his life sort of thing. Like reminded me of a couple of years ago when the offensive line was that bad. And part of it is they had no Chris Carson, no Carlos Hyde. They didn't have really any sort of running game. 2 offensive linemen got hurt on one play in the third quarter. That didn't help. It shows. As much as we love the passing game, we're like, let Russell cook and all that. Kind of helps to still have a running game to keep everybody off balance a little bit.
Oh, the Giants game was such an illustration of that. Like Gallman and Morris are running well, and
yeah,
it wasn't a great game for the offense, but it was just like it was managed. They could sustain a drive. They could get some first downs. There weren't just 3 and outs, and then the defense is on the field. People who don't like, there's the running backs don't matter, which is I think ridiculous. But even more ridiculous is running game doesn't matter, right? So like that's the even stronger claim. Like running backs don't matter is a extremist view. But running game doesn't matter is a fanatical view.
Right.
I think, obviously the running game matters. If you're gashing teams for 5 and 6 yards, it just puts you in such a good spot. It beats them up, keeps their defense on the field, keeps the clock churning, and it's effective. And if you're Seattle and you have your key guys out, and Russell Wilson took some hits yesterday. I mean, it wasn't just slide to a stop, run out of bounds. He was getting popped. And that affects pretty much everybody. I mean, if you're a defense, one of the reasons those mobile quarterbacks have been killing is that they wear out your defense, break them on the 3rd and long, and then slide. You don't even get to pop them at the end.
Right.
I mean, that's deprived them of the satisfaction. And when they start getting popped a bunch, it's just a little bit harder to focus calmly and make the plays. A good quarterback can take a hit, get back up and make a play, but take 4 or 5 hits in a quarter, good hits. You rarely see them come back up and make a lot of good plays.
Yeah, let alone 16 hits in a game like that. Yeah, right. It's a huge difference. And so that was a big deal. The funny thing too is the Bills, they actually were pretty vulnerable against the run, but if you can't do it, you can't do it. And DJ Dallas and Travis Homer and Alex Collins could not do it, and they tried. They did. I noticed they tried, and that's where you get frustrated. Like, okay, you don't want them to do that. But at the same time, they got to, but they couldn't. You're in this trap. Well, when it's 2nd and 9, 3rd and 7 all the time, you're in trouble, though.
And also, if you can't stop the other team's pass, you have forfeited the right to run.
Yep, that's also a problem. Right? When you're down, like they were early, too. They had the turnover early, and next thing you know, they're down 2 scores, and that just shaped the outcome, shaped the whole tenor of the game.
Yeah, you run when it's close enough to be a viable thing, and you can't let it get away from you.
Yeah. The other wide receiver versus corner note, Tre'Davious White covered DK Metcalf 22 times. Metcalf only got 4 targets during that stretch, 3 of 4 for 65 yards. One was that big looping ball, skyscraper ball, as they like to call it. But at the same time, he's a good cover corner. He draws DeAndre Hopkins next week, by the way.
Yeah, it's different. Technician versus beast. You know what I mean? It's like it's 2 totally different styles. I think with Metcalf, you just toss it up like that, a rainbow ball, and just say, good luck for Tre'Davious White. We're just going to have him go get it. Run it. He's faster than you. Tre'Davious White is fast, and he's so much bigger and stronger. You might be only a step or 2. You might be right there in coverage, but let's see who goes and gets it. With Hopkins, it's different, right? It's routes, it's setting each other up, and all this stuff. So, different kind of challenge. It'd be interesting to see who. I would think that Metcalf would be harder for an elite corner to cover, but maybe not. Maybe. And Hopkins is he's still good, but he's probably 3 years past his peak.
Yeah, and the other thing too is that they may not have had time to get to Metcalf. He runs deeper patterns, as we said. We mentioned the pass rush affecting him, and that's actually a big deal. In Arizona, Christian Kirk has looked really good lately. Before the bye, also, not just last night or yesterday afternoon. So I kind of wonder if it's kind of a changing of the guard right now.
Yeah, I think Hopkins will get his. I think that what's his name? Xavier Howard, I think, was on Hopkins for a bit. He got a few. He drew a couple PIs, but they were a little
three of
sketch.
them, yeah.
But they were a little ticky tack, I thought. But and a lot of times it's because the guy's covered, and a lot of times because they assume he might be covered, so they're just okay, fine. We'll go to a different guy because we'll go to pick on a weaker corner. Mm-hmm. I think Hopkins will still get his. It was just one of those games where the flow and the way they were covering him dictated it.
Right. The last game I wanted to bring up was Jacksonville-Houston. We didn't talk about that much on the radio show today, so I thought I'd bring it up here. Luton's already going to get the start next week. They've already announced that. And it might be because of Minshew's injury, but they're also like, take your time, Gardner. We want to see what we got here. And, Jacksonville, they're in the Trevor Lawrence conversation for sure. Or Justin Fields, whichever quarterback you like better. But point is, neither Luton or Minshew is likely to be a franchise quarterback, but they owe it to themselves to see what they have at least with Luton.
How pissed! I mean, I lost 2 of my 3 Survivor entries on that week 1. Oh, you idiot! How could you do Indy and Jacksonville? And people were like, "Oh, Jacksonville's not that bad. You thought they were that bad?" I'm like, "Yeah, I thought they were really bad. That's why I used the team against them." And then after they almost beat Tennessee the next week, it was like, no, Jacksonville's not even that bad, and they are. But on the other hand, if Minshew's been playing with a bad thumb, maybe that's part of why they were so bad. They had a quarterback that was compromised. Why didn't you just say something, though? It's really annoying.
Yeah.
But also, no, DJ Chark, there you are. There you are now that you're getting, now it's probably he got healthy. He's playing with a healthier quarterback. He was playing the Texans secondary. It's hard to know which is the thing.
Coming off a bye week, no Bradley Roby. I mean, there's plenty of reasons there too. It's like, and Minshew's like, why did I get that condition? It's like.
So I think Minshew was pretty good, and then he really went south after like week 2 with the hand thing, and I don't know exactly when that really started affecting him, but I still think they need to see what they have in Minshew, but Luton's starting this week, and if he's good, that they have to decide who they really want to take a look at. Right. Neither one probably is the guy, although I thought Minshew had a chance to be the guy. Problem is that quarterback is so inflated these days that to be the guy, you got to be really pretty good. Like I feel like Stafford, and I know he had a terrible game, is like the floor among your franchise quarterbacks.
Stafford and Ryan.
Yeah. And peak Ryan is like really good actually, but like this level Ryan. But Stafford's the floor. And Stafford's a good quarterback. I think Jared Goff might be below the floor of what you can they did make the Super Bowl that year. But remember, they beat the Saints on that non-PI call or whatever, and it wasn't like it was a good team, but it wasn't like a juggernaut. And and he was in a great offensive system that has since had to be changed because it didn't work. But like I think like that's the floor. Wentz has some mobility. Those guys are fine. But with Burrow, Herbert, and looks like Tua, we'll see Tua what he becomes, but that was an impressive game. I mean, the bar's getting higher and higher at QB, and people are like, we better sign our guy. We don't want to lose out on Andy Dalton long term, let him go to free agency. Or, it's like you got to find out, and you got to find out this guy's good. Because otherwise, forget it, start again. Like, you got to scrap.
Because that second contract, it might start to go the way of running backs in second contracts here, or it just ties your hands so much. I mean, look at the Cousins contract, and
right?
Look at what Minnesota had to do this past offseason to tear apart their defense. Now, maybe they wanted to do some of that and let some of those guys go, but that defense isn't that good, and they kind of had to start over and tear a lot of things up. Same thing, you look at the Lions too. They had to trade away Darius Slay. They couldn't just say, okay, well, we'll build on Slay on one side and Okudah on the other. No, they couldn't do that.
That sounds like a great way to build your team. The problem is because they overvalue QBs because they think, Stafford's really good. Whatever he costs, we got to pay that cost. But they're not realizing, dude, he's the 16th best or 14th best QB in the league. Like you can't. These guys grow on trees, and Ryan Fitzpatrick is free. These guys grow on trees, and when you have Nick Foles or you have somebody, Sam Darnold. I shouldn't pick on Darnold because he's the same as Dimes. Like they're just playing under horrendous conditions, and it's hard to really rate them. Although I got a little soured on Dimes against Tampa, who just missed some really easy throws that should have been touchdowns. But it is, barring like having a obviously terrible QB, like current Phillip Rivers or last year's Jacoby Brissett, like if you don't have someone at least Stafford good and probably better, just ditch, go back to the draft, give the guy 1 year. If you don't see an obvious rising star in your hands, ditch again like Josh Rosen. That was an easy call, and draft Kyler Murray. Just do it. Just move on. And if there is no solution in the draft or young QB, then sign whatever guy like Fitzpatrick or whatever, journeyman is cheap that ends up. I mean, think about Ryan Tannehill is good. Ryan Tannehill is better than Stafford, and he was freely available to the Titans. There are just so many of these guys. I think quarterback play is the hardest to rate, and it's the most it's the easiest to be fooled by. If a guy has a great year for, it's just conditions. Most QBs under excellent conditions will be good. And so you see them play and you're like, oh my God, this guy's so good. And then conditions get worse and you're like, wait, what happened to that guy?
Right.
And
so wouldn't it behoove you to try to focus more on improving the conditions?
Yes, that's right. Improve the soil, not the plant.
Well, and that's why it's kind of aggravating to me about the Cleveland Browns that Sashi Brown was doing that. He was trying to create that. And then, nope, we're impatient. Change that. We're gonna bring in this veteran GM, and he's the adult in the room. It's kind of like the 76ers in basketball. The process didn't work. Well, you interrupted the process. The process is a longer term thing. And professional sports owners are the worst when it comes to that. I don't want, and fans get frustrated. I get it. You don't want to, tanking sucks. Tanking's no fun at all. But
it's not tanking so much as having a longer term view, right? You're not trying to lose. You're just not putting short term. Look at corporations. Oh, we need to make a profit this quarter, so we're going to do all these things like buy back our stock, or it's just like it's all tied to the short term mentality rather than how do we make this a better business? How do we? And it takes time for a lot of the things that you really need to do in life and business, in building a team. And people are impatient. They want results. And after, okay, fine, you'll wait a year. You'll wait 2 years, maybe, year and a half. But, there's some variance and luck also in these things. So it doesn't work out a couple of players. And then you're like, who is this dork with the spreadsheet telling me to wait 2 years? My team has sucked and there's no results. How do I know that he knows what he's doing? You start to doubt. And so the thing is, like, if you're going to go that way, you have to buy in seriously. You can't just be persuaded before it starts. You got to hold on to the stock when it goes down so that it can go up. But if you don't have conviction, you're going to sell at the low, and you're going to do what the Sixers and the Browns did and just blow it up halfway through before the soil's fixed, and you're just going to try to just get, transplant some stuff from somewhere else, and it's just going to be a disaster like it's been for at least the Browns. So, yeah, it's just it's hard to be patient. You need conviction. And, but a lot of these guys preaching process are full of it too, though. It's like, just because I say the word process doesn't,
Right. Yeah. Just because I use the word analytics doesn't mean I know how to use them.
Right. Yeah. It's like when I always use this analogy, you call customer service, like, yeah, this is totally unfair. I'm getting ripped off. I need a refund. They're like, sir, it's company policy. Policy is like process. Company process. It's company process that you don't get a refund. Well, I know it's company process, but I'm saying I deserve a refund. No, you don't understand. It's policy. It's policy. That's what process sounds like to these owners. Win some damn games, dude. I don't care about your process. Give me some results. I got, and so you got to have real buy-in.
Yeah. All right. And the Browns story might not be done. I mean, they're 5-3, but neither you or I think that Baker Mayfield's any good, and that's kind of a problem. But that's the sort of thing. And we'll see, by the way, one of the stories we'll be following this week is his COVID IR status. Now, I don't think he tested positive himself. I think he's on the Matthew Stafford path, but it's frustrating that we saw that, Stafford didn't play all that well this week. And part of this, he didn't have any practice time.
Yeah. It's not getting COVID. It's being put on the COVID list causes interceptions. That's the worry. And that will never happen to Mayfield, though. That could never. Well, we can't even imagine that happening to Mayfield. I can't.
It'll cause him to have completions, but who knows?
Maybe. So, one thing that Andy Dalton proved is, so if you're at home and you think, oh, I'm worried about catching COVID. Maybe I'll concuss myself, because there's no way you could be concussed and get COVID. Nope. Don't try that. It's not a preventative measure.
Yep. You added that chapter to your concussion theory book that you've been
I
working
crossed
on.
over. My epidemiology and concussion theory work is now merging into the same thing.
It's amazing.
It's the grand unification.
Your skill sets evolve every day.
Quantum physics and relativity merging into one unified branch.
Mind blown. Is that what you're working on for East Coast offense this week, or is there something else?
I'm going to deliver the paper, and it's going to change everything. I was going to write about I can't remember the word I was going to use, but anyway, the fallacy of thinking that since things are usually a certain way, that assuming that if a case is something that, assuming that because things are in general a certain way, that specifically a new thing that falls into that category is also a certain way. So, for example, it was the thing that triggered it was the whole debate about the Rays taking out Blake Snell. It's like, well, yeah, third time through the order, it usually works, so we should do it in this case. And it's sort of the base rate fallacy. That's what I want to call it, the base rate fallacy. And how we're all lazy, and in life we can't investigate every little thing, so we usually sort of just make these heuristics like, usually it goes this way, so I'm just going to assume it's this way. And even things that we don't understand that well, we'll put them in the box of something, and then we'll say, okay, this is the case. Bitcoin went up a lot. Things that go up a lot are usually bubbles. Tulips, no. But, it's different if you investigate each thing, but we don't have time to investigate each thing. So we just quickly categorize it. We say, oh, analytics says do this. And what happens is, you get a lot of things right, but you get big things wrong. And how to really get paid off sometimes is really the key element is curiosity. Because your curiosity is going to get you to dive into some of these weird rabbit holes that other people dismiss because they're betting the base rate, but that this is different. That this time, everyone's like, oh, yeah, right, this time is different. Sure. Mm-hmm. But this time is different because you've actually done the very deep dive to see the difference, but on the surface, it looks the same as everything else. It's the Jose Bautista example. He's hit, a bunch of home runs in April or the first couple weeks of April. Nah, don't pick him up. He'll regress. But somebody who's paying close attention would be like, I don't know, this seems kind of real. And then they get paid off in this 54 home run season. Yeah,
not only that, but then multiple seasons afterward. And actually the Jays did that. Well, usually they don't pay a guy off a career year, but we're going to do it here. And it actually worked. Right. So
they saw something that other people that from the surface look ridiculous, but if you look deeper into things, the things that look the same might not be the same.
Yeah. And then we always try to say, okay, he's the next Jose Bautista. And and that doesn't always work.
Well, there's also the everything's an exception fallacy. Like the fallacy of I can spot the exception, so that's the more common fallacy among, the average person. But in our stat driven world, it's like, oh, you dare not make that mistake. Oh, I can't spot break. Everyone gets too wise to the base rate. We get wise to the base rate, and it's the whole thing of like, oh, Cunha's a rookie, you're not going to bet him. Look, Vlad Guerrero failed, or vice versa. But the idea that like, oh, we're so wise to the base rate now, we're savvy. Savvy people are those who are wise to the base rate. Mm-hmm. Novices are people who will say, no, I think this guy's different. And normally the savvy people laugh at that guy and are right, and they're like, you fell for that shiny new toy thing. But once in a while, the shiny new toy is a pretty cool toy, and it's like, okay, well, you just dismissed it because you're too base rate driven.
Yeah. So the trick is threading the needle between savvy and novice, and don't fall into either trap.
Well, but the only way to do it right is to know more about the specific thing than anybody else, because you're not going to just be able to get the exception just because, oh, I got a good hunch on this thing, right? Like you could, but it's unlikely. You don't have special powers. It's because you actually know something somebody else doesn't about that thing.
Right.
But there's only one way. You don't have infinite time to learn about every little possible exception. So it's only one thing that's going to give you the deep knowledge that people lack, and that's extreme curiosity, extreme driven curiosity about some particular thing that everyone's too bored to bother with because it's a pain in the ass. But you've actually gone down the rabbit hole and you've discovered something, and nobody believes you because they're like, Jeff is just touting Austin Kearns again. Forget about it. But maybe you find that thing, and everyone's like, dismissive, but and then you make a big bet on it at great odds because the public hasn't come around, and that's how you win, basically.
Right. And then the other trick is having the time to pursue all those loose threads. And that's the real problem. Yeah. All right. That's going to wrap up today. We got Jake and Joe on the Free Agent Podcast tomorrow. Thanks to everybody for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review, and watch. Thank you for listening and watching. Have a great day.